Hi, welcome to Alex's ESL World. I'm Alex, and I'm here to help you with your English. I recently completed my pronunciation course, so if you need help with that, please go to the pronunciation tab on my website or the pronunciation playlist on YouTube. This video is my first grammar video. I'm starting out with a course all about verbs. If you know about verbs, you have a good start at knowing how to communicate. This first lesson is about simple verbs in present, past, and future. These verb tenses will take you far. We use them every day. So, let's get started. First, there are two things you have to understand about verbs. One, you have to know how to form them, what they look like. So form is important. And two, you have to know how and when to use them. I'm going to use the verb to work as my example. It's one I think we can all relate to. When I say to work, that is the infinitive form of the verb. In some languages, the infinitive is only one word. For example, in French, the word for to work is travailler. In Spanish, trabajar. In Korean, it's ilhada. This form is called the infinitive. Just remember that in English, the infinitive is made by using the word to with the base form of the verb. So when I say work, that's the base form. And when I say to work, that's the infinitive form. So we're going to start with the verb to work. First, I'm going to show you how we form regular verbs in the simple present. Then I'll talk about what it means when we use it. Before I start conjugating a verb, I want to quickly make sure you know the vocabulary I'm going to be using. On the left side of the chart, I've put first person, second person, and third person. When I was a child learning this in school, I had a teacher who told us that first person meant I or we, because the most important person is ourselves. I'm not saying this is necessarily true, but it helped me to remember, and maybe it'll help you remember too. She said that second person is next in importance because it's who I'm talking to. And third person, according to that teacher, was the least important because that's when we're talking about other people. Now, singular means one and only one, and plural means more than one. I'm sure many of you know all this, but I want to be sure to cover everything so everyone will understand all of it. Now let's look at the pronouns that go with each section. These are subject pronouns. We'll start with the singular side. I, you. He is the masculine subject pronoun. She is the feminine subject pronoun. And it is what we call a neuter pronoun. We use it when we talk about things that aren't people, like table, building, or car. I've decided to add they under singular pronouns because there are people who do not feel comfortable being referred to as he or she. This is a very personal choice. Many people ask to be referred to as they because they don't feel like they comfortably fit as either he or she. I want to be respectful to everyone, so I thought I should include they as it's being used nowadays. So if you hear me use they or their when I clearly need to be using a singular pronoun, you'll know why. Remember, living languages are always changing. The plural subject pronouns are we, you, yes, the same for singular or plural, and they. Okay, now for the conjugations. Starting on the left with singular conjugations, I work, you work, he works, she works, and it works, and of course they work. Notice that the third person singular form has an S on the end, unless of course we're using they. As you will see, That is the only change in simple present tense. Third person singular has an S added to the end. I'm going to leave out the singular they for now because it's still being conjugated like the plural they. Just remember that sometimes it will be singular, but usually it's plural. For the plurals, we have we work, you work, just like the singular, and they work. See how easy that was? It's actually much easier than verbs in most languages. Okay, now you know what they look like. What do they mean? Simple present tense is a little tricky. It's not that simple, and it doesn't mean what's happening right now. The simple present tense can be used to talk about things or situations that exist always, usually, or as a habit. They exist now, have existed in the past, and will probably always exist. For example, I brush my teeth every morning. The sun rises in the east. And tigers live in Asia. I like to use timelines to show the meanings of verbs. Here's what the timeline looks like for simple present. The arrow represents time passing. On the left is the past. In the middle, where there's a line, is now. And on the right side is the future. As you can see, the simple present shows a repeated action over time, and also just a passage of time, like with the tigers. So we could even have a straight line across for that kind of sentence. I'll show you a timeline for each verb tense. I first saw timelines used by Betty Azar, who has written some grammar books with very good explanations and charts. I'll add a link on my website to her books in case you're interested in buying one. So that's the simple present tense, and I think it's the hardest of the simple tenses. Let's take a look at the simple past tense. The simple past tense is much easier than the simple present. It just means that something happened in the past and it's finished. As for the structure, with regular verbs, they all look exactly the same, whether your subject is I, you, or she. If you're concerned about pronunciation of these past tense verbs, go back to my pronunciation video about ed at the end of verbs. Here you see the verb to work, conjugated in the simple past tense. I worked, you worked, he worked, she worked, it worked, we worked, and they worked. Let's have a look at the examples from before, but put into the past tense. I brushed my teeth this morning. The sun rose this morning. Don't be confused by rose. It's an irregular verb. The last one, tigers lived in more areas long ago. You can see what I mean about how easy this tense is by looking at the timeline. See that we're just talking about one event that happened at a time in the past. It's over, not continuing. Finally, we have the simple future. This one is very standard and it doesn't change when we conjugate it. There's just one complication. There are actually two ways to do the simple future. I'm going to show you the standard way using will plus the base verb. But keep in mind that we can also say going to instead of will. I just did this when I said I'm going to show you. Did you notice? Here's the chart that shows the conjugation of the verb work in the simple future tense. This is how we make the future with will and the base verb. I will work, you will work, he will work, she will work, it will work, we will work, they will work. You remains the same. I've put the same sentences in the future so you can compare, at least similar sentences. I will brush my teeth tomorrow morning. I'll brush them tonight too, but I'm trying to keep the sentences as much like the first examples as I can. The sun will rise tomorrow morning. Of course, it will rise every morning. Tigers will live in Asia for a long time. I certainly hope this is true. As you see, the timeline for simple future is just like the timeline for simple past, except that the event happens in the future instead of the past. And that's all there is to simple tenses. In the next video, I'll show you all about progressive or continuous verb tenses. Until then, remember to be kind to each other, and I'll see you soon.